As people have seen, much of my recent output has been railing against what I feel to be critique gone too far to the point of absurdity. People falling to hyperbole that means nothing and says nothing, only to stoke a hate and content cycle. So how about I jump to the other side of the fence, and instead of pointing out what I feel are pointless shoutings, I give my own critiques of the game, giving reasonable critiques without jumping to the extremes of, this proves the game is dead. So get off that carousel, we're jumping onto the roller coaster. Please hit the like button, hit subscribe, comment on the video, and go follow my socials such as Blue Sky and Twitch. I maintain other video games are cool to play, and do so regularly. Prepared for what I think are the problems the game is having. This video will be split up into 7 sections, each one going on a different topic and discussing the wider concept, going deep into what I believe are the benefits and the negatives of each thing. You know, instead of sticking to just why everything about it is bad, I'll speak on the wider effect on the game as well, where applicable. The first topic I will jump into, I'll just make a big one to show I'm not playing around with softball critique. Duty support. I think that duty support has had a bigger effect on the game than the standardized wall-to-walls we've had since Heavensward. This is both for good and for much worse. Let's start with the good. No matter what, as an MMO, you are at the mercy of other players. This has so many good and bad things on its own. Socializing being the main thing you can get out of players that robots do not have. Though again, this can be good or bad. You can have a nice chat, or a tank that uses zero mitigation, wipes the party multiple times, calls you several slurs, and then leaves. This was after already waiting 10 minutes in queue for that tank, only to need to wait for another. Duty support skips all that. Just your favorite NPCs going through the dungeon with you, getting you all the loot, since even loot from stuff not your job is useful, and nearly always doing mechanics correctly. You don't get any of the benefits of having real people, but get none of the negatives, and a couple bonuses. The final costs are a few less pieces of loot, and the length of a dungeon is 30 minutes on average, so long as you don't die. This often offsets queue times, functionally making runs faster. This is great for players having a bad day and not wanting to deal with people. Or maybe learning a new job and want an even safer environment than players, since duty support is intentionally limited in a few ways. Like their lack of AoE, this discourages wall-to-walls, not like you'd speed them up much. So you can focus on the minutia without any risk. Players do need to jump into social situations eventually, and I think that's good. But they have the option at any given time when doing dungeons. Choice is always great. Them adding every dungeon, and probably start on the trials in 8.0, also great. There has been some side effects. Dungeon bosses, while still having some bangers that are a cut above, had to be simplified in a few aspects. The AI of duty support needs to be able to handle the dungeon mechanics. This means things that are extremely consistent with little variance. Bosses, where it does not matter where it is positioned, or the boss will position itself where needed. You also can't quite do any random bullshit go mechanics like we would sometimes get. In a savage environment, I have been really against it like with Honey Be Lovely, but in a casual environment, where punishment for mistakes is much lower, this kind of stuff is fine. If you take a hit or two, you survive even on a healer. Savage, you just end up dead. But an AI can't handle it if it's completely random. At least without trying to program them to a degree far more than they currently feel like they are. They do not feel like they can handle a Realm Reborn sorts of design, rather than the devs just feeling that design is outdated. Maybe in the future they will handle more, but that future is not here. Which means when we look at the current fights, even the complex ones do come with a level of simplicity. There are a lot of fancy new gimmicks we see being made in trials and raids, but would a trust be able to execute on some of them? The big proof of it all is how things have been changing with the old dungeons. There are obviously some good changes in there, like the first boss of Zemile Darkhold. How did you do this boss pre-change? You brought the boss to the first crystal, and then it dies. You didn't do anything but hit the boss. There's no healing, no tanking, nothing. Yeah, if the tank grabbed the ads, they were wasting DPS. Now it's an actual fight. But the problem is, the path up to the boss has been made complete garbage. The one positive part of this dungeon is the run-up to the first boss. You can do a wall-to-wall from the start all the way to the first boss door. The purple crystal damage reduction would solve all your issues. It was like, what, 80% mitigation? That's a permanent tank LB3. Unfortunately, those are gone. The bots can't really do anything with that. They just plant wherever the mobs are. So the unique crystal gimmick, the only cool part of the dungeon, is gone. So many bosses had to change from gimmick fights to basic dodge the AoEs. In some cases like Copperbell's slime boss, it's good that it's gone. That boss sucked. But then there's the Dragon of Brayflocks, and that boss was actually cool and taught tanks to move bosses where needed. We lost a lot of unique things, with a mix of both cool and awful things being in that. I always defended Aurum Vale, and that one has been decimated completely. I get the game doesn't have the same friction of this kind of design anymore, but I don't think the problem with everyone hating the linear design of dungeons is anything to do with them actually being linear. Thousand Maws, another dungeon I defended, was functionally linear too, despite the split paths. Everyone agreed you took the right path. The left path was to be avoided. I took it for fun sometimes, and I'm sure others did too. Regardless, we had dungeons with splits and exploration and all that. Players opted out. We found it was annoying, or not worth the hassle, or not optimal for our time. I'm reminded for the millionth time about Dan Olsen's Warcraft videos. In this case specifically, I'm thinking of this clip where players chose one specific linear corridor for no reason, but because that's what everyone else does.
In the Sepulchre of the first ones, these two paths at the entrance are the same. They're literally identical. There is absolutely nothing to distinguish going left from going right. But for whatever arbitrary reason, looking for raid groups have established an entirely unspoken assumption, a rut-like convention, that you go to the right. If you get dropped into a randomly assembled LFR group and you lead the group down the left path, people will yell at you.
Being a line isn't the problem. A line with nothing interesting is the issue. It being the same pools is the issue. But we can't have as many interesting things with the duty support. Think of Wanderer's Palace Hard and the Mamuljaw totems. The enemies have huge buffs while inside of them, meaning they take forever to kill. Guess what the NPCs can't move the enemies out of? What we need is fights with weird gimmicks again. But ever since Trust became a thing, that guaranteed we won't be seeing those ever again. The goal of duty support is awesome, but the drawbacks have been huge. What's going to happen to all the trials once they work on those? Stuff like Ravana and Nidhogg, the Warring Triad? Can they program them to handle everything that happens? I am afraid it's going to be like the redone King Mog. A fight completely different, completely alien to what it originally was. Nothing like the extreme if the player has a group able to dive into that. Your favorite fight that you look forward to sometimes getting might be irrecognizable because duty support can't be programmed to properly perform it. Maybe I'm just overreacting. Maybe I am not giving duty support enough credit for how it was made. But while I like a lot of dungeon bosses, they feel like there's an element of chaos they're missing. So while I think duty support is a super cool thing, I also kinda wish it wasn't there at the same time. For the next topic, let's take something a bit smaller. Positionals and how things have changed since the beginning of the game. The context behind these skills have changed so much over the years. Back in ARR, we had one single target marker. The normal one you will see on overworld mobs. That's it. That same marker was on every single enemy. Go look at Leviathan. Why does he have a tail? Besides the mechanics, so you could do your positionals. The head has no rear positional, so it would be literally impossible to do them. There is no omnidirectional marker in the game. Want to know when we started getting those? Palace of the Dead! That is the first omnidirectional marker set as known to players. Pretty sure even the Diadem didn't have them. You might also say, just use True North. What True North? That button doesn't exist yet. You have to aim your positional or lose it. And as I showed last video, ARR started with Heavy Thrust's positional, giving you an entire buff and not just a decent potency boost. Hitting your positionals was extremely important these days. While bosses tended to spin around less and such, mechanics overall simpler, we didn't have any tools to help ourselves. Nowadays we have those omnidirectionals and True North, and now with Dawntrail we have the temporary omnidirectional function for when bosses need it. A boss can live in a wall for a long time and not kill off your DPS. In Heavensward, they let Dragoon launch with a 190 potency positional, though that got massively reduced to only 90 potency. That's still pretty big a DPS loss to not perform them. Nowadays we have less positionals, I still do all the monk positionals out of habit, less potency loss from missing them, and a tool to still get positionals when mechanics do not allow for it. It's to the point people have been speculating for a while that positionals would be entirely removed, which yeah, if they're going to make them functionally not exist, might as well go the whole way and skip the formalities. Bring back positionals to the forefront. I don't care what their reasons have been with the constantly de-emphasizing. Bring back the risk and reward of them, if you're going to make them literally free anyway. What was the point of making Vamp Fatale omnidirectional in her ad phase 2? The ads being omnidirectional is enough. They're an orb and a stick. She doesn't need it. I think I mentioned this offhand in Endwalker, but it only ends up being more true in Dawntrail. Hi, postscript writing Wesk here. I wrote this script before both FanFest and me getting the free Jollibee stuff. Any edits I have made to the script are entirely based on me not feeling it works in voicing, or because I was wrong about something. Here's the Patreon post date for proof. This post-scripting edition is not that though. It's an addition because FanFest. The Dragoon Evolved mode is extremely positionals based. We do not have numbers, so maybe the punishment for failing is too low still. But the fact that they are already making efforts on this point is really awesome. I want positionals to come back, to matter. Evolved Dragoon has a left and right positional instead of unified flank? That's huge. This won't be the only interjection I make like this, because the FanFest did already address some of my points. On the other end of simplifying things, we have simplifying the Aether current collection. People beg for the overworld to be used more, not be tons of wasted potential. And one of the biggest things they use the overworld for is cheered for when it gets removed. 15 Aether currents isn't so hard. They've used them to make you explore the overworld even just a little bit. Recently though, nearly every Aether current, with no exceptions, are on the critical path. Players want to just outright skip to the flying, to not look at cool set pieces or silly set pieces or any of that. Just fly over it. No visiting the world they've built. It's overlap that doesn't make sense. If they are going to do more with the overworld, we shouldn't be glad that they are removing something fun. I really like Aether currents. That one in the locks? Actually genius. It makes you think about how the map is made, makes you explore it, and gives you a tour of a lot of different things. Little things like this are good and important to have. Aether currents are a thing you do once per zone, and then you have it forever. Little bits of friction like this are good to have. It's easy, doesn't take that long, but I truly find it fun. I want to keep them being these exploration challenges along with adding more on top. I am unsure of what specific to add to make the overworld more. People have had suggestions, but often they're too general, or literally just stuff we already have, just not located in the overworld. Limited jobs help quite a bit, but only for so long. Level cap and limited monster count. Relics could have been used to do stuff more in the world, but people would whine to no end about that. Look forward to that video, cause hoo boy, I have a lot to say about the phantom weapons. Point is, what do they add that people will actually take to? What will people actually enjoy beyond just suggestions? I want to see them try. And try they will, it seems. They want to improve field zones. They have stated that maps, hunt, and fates are on the docket to be improved to reach this goal. But more is hopefully coming as well. This one is a very, very short topic. Stop selling stuff on the Mog store that can't be used on all races. This is absolutely awful. There are zero excuses. Oh, Vieira can't use old gear because we need to redesign it all to fit their heads. Okay. This isn't old gear. This is brand new gear. Even if it's gear that is old on the Mog store, it should not be allowed to be sold. I don't care what things are being fixed, so hats are now all wearable now. They shouldn't have been sold without the fix. This is one of the few points I will actually agree is scummy about the store. The rest, yeah, no, extremely optional visual items is standard fare. Especially when FF14 is basically the only thing keeping Square Enix alive, what with moronic CEO peddling NFTs and AI instead of good games. That is unfortunately extremely lucky that they're not loot boxes. Thanks, Blizzard. Also, Nexon, and basically inventing gacha for gaming. This game is nowhere close to the level of other games in this genre. I wish we could go back to the better days of gaming where we weren't flooded in microtransactions. But we are far too gone in gaming as a whole. You see those $70 games? Don't get anyone started on international pricing too. This game is a fucking unicorn that we have it this good. MapleStory, this ain't. Also, just improve the accessibility options. They do need feedback from colorblind players and such. They listened and fixed the 7.2 Dawntrail trial, but giving players more options is just so much better. Players can fix stuff for themselves as needed, while also putting care into not having these issues to begin with. Like, personally, I had 0 issues in P3S. That one is infamous, but I had no problems. It's not so simple as this should be obvious, just offhand. You need to actively consider the effect on colorblind people, and they should. But for all we know, they tested with colorblind settings, and it was enough as far as they could tell. They both need the feedback, but also need to really work more on the settings. Bring in a specialist or something. Colorblind filter is also just a filter placed on the whole game, essentially. Settings need to be far more granular, far more actively useful. Colorblindness is a lot more common than people realize. I've known some of them, and I've had people suggest I have some form of yellow-green colorblindness, though I think that might just be monitor settings, or them just being very perceptive to very, very slight shade variations. I don't think I actually have any level of colorblind. Next up is tutorials. Hall of the Intermediate? Great. Few notes. I made an entire video about that too. Watch the video if you want my thoughts. I don't want to rehash 18 minutes here. Instead, let's talk about the Guildhests and their extremely missed potential. In a world where we stayed on the more gimmicky end of fights, these are some basic encounters to get you situated. Nowadays, Guildhests don't really do anything. Basic training parties is to get you into keeping basic aggro as a tank. Under the Armor is about ads, and then it goes off the rails. Hero in a half shell would be a good learn to read check that way too many players will fail, as would Ward Up. The rest are just basic encounters with varying degrees of gimmick. We've seen no updates to the system at all, and while they're great for Grand Company seals early on, that's about all they're good for anymore. I think players very much claim lack of tutorializing in all the wrong places. The game tutorializes and teaches you so much. There's just so much to learn, you might not remember all of it. The things it actually doesn't teach can widely be taught in some tutorial duties like Guildhests were meant to be. From the design end, it should be extremely easy to make. reuse assets like crazy. Now it's just the coding you have to do. That's not nothing. I'm not someone who thinks it's just super easy to create video games. It's far less than otherwise is my point. The issue is, how much is worth doing for the new player experience? There are only so many people who haven't played the game who still might. Only so many new players after expanding as far as things have gotten. A thought that is only completely pointless when you consider that's what duty support is for. To keep the game able to be played even after it's on life support. So how about improved tutorials on that end? Moving on to the next topic, this is something a bit more meta than the game. That is the way the devs have been giving their reasonings for game changes. There is a very, very stark contrast to what we used to get and what we get now. Every patch we get information about why they change jobs the way they do, whether people are happy with those reasons or not. They could do to add a bit more on that end, go into deeper detail for different reasons. We've heard player feedback cited for many of the changes they have made over the years. Why we didn't get a combat field in Endwalker. They are listening to player feedback, no matter what people want to say. The greater question is, what exact feedback are they using? This would go a long way to quell a lot of the speculation people jump to anytime the devs say anything. This video in itself is a proof that criticism is good and all. Good communication, further improvements, would go a long way to mitigate that bad faith criticism. You can't extrapolate on the stuff you didn't get enough info on if you've been given the full picture. There's obviously limits to what they can say. Like, they've been working on the new Ultimate for how long now? They could have been in early development on it and thought, oh, we need to do some updates on Black Mage because we designed something it can't do, and it would be pretty dumb to design the encounter around one specific job. I'm making a lot of assumptions there. Old Black Mage can probably do the new Ultimate. The point is that they can't say all of that. They could still elaborate better and potentially imply a little more. Regardless, live letters can be so much more than just content previews. Like, oh, it's really cool to see the start of the Alliance raid, but do we really need to see how the first boss's mechanic works? We don't need filler like that. The content is next week. We'll see it then. We can't get feedback from an NPC though. That comes from you, Yoshi P. You're the one doing the live letter, not Zariel Jaw. And FanFest just further proved this to me. The way they talked to us about the Battle Pass, and yes, this is what a Battle Pass is, and the evolved jobs was really lacking. The Battle Pass is way too early, and they didn't stick to high-level talks quite enough. They gave us very little info, and left it open to too much interpretation. The new jobs, the same thing. They gave us info, but left far too many questions that would only be properly answered in the dev panel. Partly it was on purpose to get people to watch the dev panel, but they went along with it the wrong way. And I do not think that part was intended. People were more worried about how it would work than excited. At least I was. I doubted how the system could work completely, and still slightly do on tanks and healers. But after the dev panel, I'm far more looking forward to letting Tamaki work his magic. Good communication attempts to minimize on this. It's not simply more info, but more info that doesn't just raise further questions. I want to end on a much more serious topic. Do you know about the Weeb Police? If you do not, then let this serve as a public service announcement. They're what are believed to be a single person who invades Limsa on select servers, makes 50 of the same character across a billion accounts, and parks them. They're big, they're ugly, and they can harass people to no penalty. This has been a thing going on for years. This is a statement I should not be able to make. The way too long-awaited blacklist settings should not have taken as long as they have to be done. They're still not complete. Blacklisting someone is, for some reason, one way. Party Finder will block people from joining if you blacklist them, but you can get queued with someone you blacklisted and they can see you just fine. So, stalkers can stalk you just fine. Boy, that's a good system now, isn't it? Making the stalker's job easier. Need to track them in reverse stalking or something just to avoid them. That shouldn't work like that. People you want to be rid of should not be able to slide in. On top of all that, it doesn't stop the weeb police. You need to add dozens of characters per day. Even if you do have a completely empty blacklist, you won't for long if you want to be rid of them. GMs wouldn't do anything either, even after extreme breaches of TOS. There are so many complaints about them in specific, and yet it wasn't a quick fix. Why are things like that possible? A consistent problem with the same name, same MO, same everything. You don't need some giant investigation to connect the dots of nuisance behavior like that. And that's what it is, a nuisance at the best of times. It just gets worse from there. People will make mistakes and catch bans. Even the people who will claim, oh, I did nothing wrong, and then it was a ban for cursing. They got heated for a moment and lost their cool. Not good, but so much less an issue than a consistent problem. Someone being intentionally awful, continually. There is no accident here. And let me be clear, I am not the first person to complain about this, not by a long shot. There have been people on the front lines for blacklist improvements for years. Now that they're looking at it, there's no reason for half measures. Fix the problems as far as they can be reasonably fixed. The whole blacklist wipe thing didn't need to happen if it was taken as far as it needed to. And that is my short list for things I have problems with in the game. I could go further with nitpicks and things I just blatantly have forgotten. Aether currents and the overworld wasn't an inclusion at all until I started writing the outro here. I went back and added that in. I'm not gonna update this outro if I add more though. Either way, we can criticize without doom posting. We can criticize without calling for devs to be killed. Even when the topic is genuinely important and needs to be fixed, let's encourage firm but level-headed discussion and criticism. In the meantime, please rate, comment, subscribe, and all that stuff. If you'd like to see my stuff beyond the channel, I stream regularly and not just FF14. Other games are good too. Or join my Discord and poke my brain for opinions and stuff. I have a lot of them, if it isn't obvious at this point. Take care and may the power of Anne and Nidhogg stay waste to your enemies.